The steam whistle shrieked across the empty plains as the westbound train slowed its pace. A plume of black smoke curled against the wide, painted sky, and the wheels ground to a screech before halting beside a small wooden platform. The station, if it could be called that, was nothing more than a rough shack and a signboard bearing the weathered name Red Creek Junction. The passengers stirred. Some men in dust-stained coats grabbed their sacks. A woman with a crying infant shifted in her seat. And one lone figure, young, weary, but clutching her reticule as though it were her last anchor, rose with a start when the conductor barked. "Red Creek. This stop is Red Creek." She hesitated only a moment before stepping into the aisle. Her name was Clara Bennett, 22 years old, born to hard winters and harder fortunes in the East. For months she had carried a letter folded in her Bible, written in a strong hand by a man she had never seen. A rancher. A widower. A man seeking a wife who would mother his child and share in the rugged labor of frontier life. She had answered because she had little else left. Her parents had passed, her brother moved far north, and her prospects dwindled with each passing season. A mail-order marriage might sound desperate to some, but to Clara it was a promise of belonging. She stepped down from the train, skirts brushing the dust, heart fluttering. She scanned the platform for a man holding a sign with her name, or perhaps simply standing with the expectant look of one who waited for a bride. But the platform was nearly empty. Only 2 ranch hands leaned against the rail, smoking. A wagon creaked in the distance, and a little girl in a patched dress clung to her father's hand, eyes wide as she watched the passengers disembark. Clara's pulse quickened. Had she come to the wrong place? "Excuse me," she murmured to the conductor, her voice trembling. "This is Red Creek." "Aye, miss," he replied, tipping his hat before turning to wave at the engineer. Red Creek Junction. Next stop's another 40 miles west. 40 miles. Clara's stomach sank. She dug into her reticule, pulling out the folded letter. Her intended directions had been clear. Step off at Red Rock Station. I will be waiting by the wagon, with a gray horse tied beside it. Red Rock. Not Red Creek. Her breath caught. She had stepped off too soon. The conductor shouted, "All aboard!" The wheels clanged, the whistle screamed again, and the train lurched forward. Clara turned sharply, panic rising in her chest. "Wait, please, stop!" she cried, running a few steps after the departing car. But it was no use. Within seconds the train was gone, rumbling into the distance, leaving her in a haze of dust. Her chest tightened. She was stranded. "Papa," whispered the small voice of the little girl nearby. Clara turned. The child was no more than 6, with golden hair pulled into 2 crooked braids. Her eyes, clear as spring water, were fixed on Clara. She tugged at her father's rough hand, her voice trembling with awe. "Papa," she repeated, "God finally answered us." The man beside her, broad-shouldered, weathered, with a beard touched by sun and dust, shifted his gaze to Clara. He studied her with the wary, measuring eyes of a man accustomed to disappointment. Clara felt the heat rise to her cheeks. She clutched her bag tighter, unsure what to say. The little girl let go of her father's hand and rushed forward, wrapping her tiny arms around Clara's skirts. "Papa," she said again, almost pleading, "she's here. Just like I prayed." Clara froze, heart pounding. The man stepped forward at last. His boots crunched on the dry earth, and when he spoke, his voice was steady, low, and cautious. "Beg your pardon, ma'am," he said. "You're not from around here, are you?" Clara swallowed, her throat dry. "And no, sir. I believe I've made a dreadful mistake." The little girl looked up, eyes wide. "She's not a mistake, Papa. She's an answer." The man gave her a gentle frown, then turned his eyes back to Clara. "Name's Eli Turner. This here's my daughter, Grace." Clara dipped her head. "Clara Bennett." Eli nodded slowly. "And what brings you to Red Creek?" "Not much reason for folk to come out this way." Clara faltered, fingers twisting around her reticule. She didn't know how to explain without sounding foolish. "I was meant to meet someone at Red Rock, but I got off too soon." Eli's brows lifted slightly. "Red Rock's 40 miles west." "Yes." Clara forced a breath. "And the train is gone." For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the creak of the wagon nearby. Grace still clung to Clara's skirts, as though she had already claimed her. Eli finally rubbed the back of his neck. "You'll not get far on foot. And there's no more trains until morning." Clara's stomach twisted. She had little money, nowhere to go, and no family within hundreds of miles. I'll manage," she whispered, though she did not believe it. But Grace shook her head fiercely. "No, Papa. She can't stay out here. God sent her." Eli's jaw worked. He looked from his daughter's pleading eyes to the weary face of the young woman before him. Something inside him shifted, though he fought to keep his voice level. "You've nowhere to stay tonight?" he asked at last. Clara shook her head. "Then you'd best come with us," Eli said, his tone gruff but not unkind. "It ain't much, but our place is safe. You can rest, get your bearings, and we'll see about getting you to Red Rock come morning." Clara's breath caught in relief. "That is very kind, sir." Grace beamed, slipping her hand into Clara's. "See, Papa. I told you." "God heard." Eli sighed, but he could not hide the flicker of something softer in his eyes as he led them toward the wagon. The ride to the Turner homestead was slow, the wagon bumping along the rutted dirt road. Clara sat beside Grace, the child chatting happily, as though she had been waiting her whole life to welcome her. "Papa says I should pray every night," Grace confided, her small hand clutching Clara's. "So I prayed for God to send us someone kind. Someone who could smile again at Papa. And he did." "He sent you." Clara's heart ached. She glanced toward Eli, who sat silent, rein steady in his calloused hands. His eyes stayed fixed on the horizon, but there was a heaviness about him, the air of a man carrying grief too long. The homestead came into view at last, a modest cabin with smoke curling from its chimney, fields stretching wide, and a corral with a few lean horses. It was plain, but it spoke of years of labor and quiet endurance. Inside, the home was humble but tidy. Clara removed her bonnet, smoothing her hair, feeling suddenly self-conscious. She did not belong here, and yet Grace hovered at her side as though unwilling to let go. Eli set down his hat, clearing his throat. "You can take the small room tonight. Grace usually sleeps there, but she can stay with me. It ain't much, but you'll have a bed and privacy." Clara's eyes softened. "Thank you. I'm deeply grateful." He gave a curt nod. As Grace tugged Clara toward the little room, she whispered again, almost as if afraid her father might hear. "You'll stay, won't you? Papa doesn't smile anymore. But I think he might if you stay." Clara's heart trembled. She could not answer. She was promised to another man, in another town. And yet, in this small house, with this child's arms clinging around her, she felt an ache of belonging she had never known. That night, as she lay on the simple cot, the prairie wind whispering outside the window, Clara pressed her hand over the folded letter in her Bible. She was supposed to be somewhere else. Promised to someone else. And yet Grace's words lingered in her heart like a prayer not her own. "Papa, God finally answered us." Morning came with the sound of roosters crowing and the warm smell of biscuits baking on the stove. Clara woke slowly, the pale light filtering through the small window of the Turner homestead. For a moment she lay still, listening. The sounds were unfamiliar, yet they wrapped around her with a strange comfort she had not felt in years. She rose and dressed, smoothing the wrinkles in her traveling skirt. When she stepped into the kitchen, she found Grace already seated at the table, swinging her legs, cheeks rosy with delight. "Good morning, Miss Clara," the little girl chirped. Clara smiled, despite herself. "Good morning, Grace." Eli stood by the stove, lifting the iron skillet with steady hands. His eyes flicked to Clara as she entered, and he gave a brief nod. "Morning, ma'am." Clara's cheeks warmed under his gaze. "You've been up for hours already, I suspect." Eli shrugged. "Stock doesn't feed itself." They ate together, biscuits with honey, a little fried pork, and fresh milk. Clara found herself laughing softly at Grace's chatter, though Eli remained quiet, speaking only when necessary. But in his silence she sensed watchfulness, not coldness, but a kind of guarded care. When the meal ended, Clara folded her hands, forcing herself to speak the words she had been dreading. "Mr. Turner." "Eli," she began softly, "you have been kind beyond measure. But I must make my way to Red Rock today. I was promised to someone there." Grace's face fell instantly. "No," she cried, clambering from her chair. "You can't leave. Papa, tell her she can't." Eli's jaw tightened. He set his fork down slowly, eyes fixed on Clara. "She's right about one thing," he said. "If you came here on account of a promise, it's only right you see it through." Clara's throat constricted. "I gave my word," she whispered. Grace's eyes brimmed with tears. "But God sent you to us," she said fiercely. "I prayed, and he answered." Eli pulled Grace gently into his lap, holding her close. "Grace," he said firmly, "sometimes God's answers ain't what we expect. Miss Clara has a duty, and we must respect that." Clara looked away, her heart aching. She wished she could gather Grace into her arms, promise her she would never leave. But how could she? Her word bound her elsewhere. Later that morning, Eli hitched the wagon. The silence between him and Clara was heavy, filled with things neither dared say aloud. Grace clung to Clara's hand until the last moment, her tears streaking her cheeks. "You'll come back," she whispered fiercely, as though speaking it might make it true. "You have to." Clara kissed her brow, voice trembling. "God knows best, little one." Perhaps. She could not finish the thought. Instead, she climbed into the wagon beside Eli. The ride to Red Rock was long, the prairie stretching endless beneath the wide blue sky. Clara stole glances at Eli as he drove. His profile was strong, his hand steady, but his eyes carried a sorrow too deep to hide. At last he spoke. "I buried my wife 3 winters ago," he said quietly, not looking at her. "Childbirth took her. Since then it's been just me and Grace. She's a good girl, but she misses a woman's touch. A mother's kindness." Clara's breath caught. "I see. She prayed for you, you know," Eli went on. His voice was rough. "Every night she asked God to send someone. Someone who could smile again in our home." Clara's heart twisted. "And now I must leave." He nodded once, jaw clenched. "It's the way of things." By afternoon, they reached Red Rock Station. Clara's heart pounded as she saw a man standing near a wagon, just as the letter had promised. He was tall and thin, with sharp features and restless eyes. He looked up as the wagon approached, scanning her with a hungry sort of eagerness. "Miss Bennet," he called. Clara swallowed. "Yes." The man, Samuel Price, grinned. "Finally. Thought the train left you behind. I been waitin' all day." Eli helped her down, his hands lingering a moment longer than necessary as he steadied her. Their eyes met, just for a breath, but enough to make Clara's chest ache. "Well," Eli said gruffly, stepping back, "I'll leave you to it. Safe travels, Miss Bennet." Clara's heart twisted. She wanted to call out, to beg him not to go. But duty pressed heavy on her shoulders. She turned toward Samuel, forcing a smile. Yet as the afternoon wore on, unease gnawed at her. Samuel was not unkind, but there was something in his manner, hurried, impatient, almost desperate, that unsettled her. He spoke of his land, his need for children, his expectations for a wife. He did not ask about her thoughts, her past, her dreams. By evening, Clara felt her stomach sink. This was the man she had promised to. This was the life she had chosen. And yet her heart whispered of a little girl's prayers and a rancher's quiet strength. That night, as she lay in the small boarding house Samuel had arranged, Clara could not sleep. She stared at the ceiling, tears slipping down her cheeks. She had given her word. But had she mistaken her calling? Could it be that God had led her astray, only to lead her right? "Papa, God finally answered us." Grace's voice echoed in her soul. By dawn, Clara knew what she must do. She met Samuel at breakfast, her hands trembling. "Mr. Price," she began, voice soft but firm, "I cannot stay. Forgive me, but I realize now my heart is not meant to be here." His face darkened. "You agreed. You answered my letter. You're mine." Clara straightened. "I am not a possession, sir. I gave my word, but I cannot bind my life where God has not placed my heart." Samuel's jaw clenched. He muttered under his breath, but he did not stop her as she gathered her things. By afternoon, she was on the road again, her feet carrying her back toward the place where her soul had found rest. The journey was long, but with the help of a passing wagon driver, she returned to Red Creek by dusk the next day. Her heart pounded as the Turner homestead came into view. Eli was outside, splitting wood. When he looked up and saw her walking toward him, his axe froze mid-swing. "Clara," he breathed. She stopped a few feet away, chest heaving. "I could not stay in Red Rock. I realized. My place is not there." His eyes searched hers, disbelief and longing mingling.
"You're sure?"
She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks.
"Grace prayed for me,
and God answered. Not with the man I thought, but with the family I never dreamed I'd find." For a long moment, Eli said nothing. Then his axe slipped from his hand, and he stepped forward, pulling her into his arms. "You don't know what this means," he whispered, his voice breaking. Clara clung to him, her tears wetting his shirt.
"I think I do."
From the doorway, Grace squealed with joy, running toward them. She wrapped her little arms around both, beaming up with shining eyes.
"I told you, Papa. I told you God answered us."
Eli bent, resting one hand on his daughter's head, the other still holding Clara close. His eyes met Clara's, filled with a hope he had long thought lost. "Then maybe," he said softly, "it's time we start believing again." And in that moment, beneath the wide prairie sky, with Grace's laughter ringing like bells, Clara knew she was home.